Well, bringing into the conversation now, we can be joined by Kashif Shafiq, who is the Sudan Country Director at Relief International. He comes to us from Port Sudan. Thank you so much for joining us, Kashif. The situation just untenable at the moment, and we've seen from this latest strike. From your understanding, what exactly happened, and what's the situation now for civilians on the ground in Omdurman?
Thank you so much for inviting me on this. Actually, the situation in Khartoum is dire and continue to deteriorate. What we are seeing from our staff on ground in Khartoum might be that death toll may increase over 100. This is a fear because the casualties are coming on regular basis. The ongoing violence has forced people to flee and take cover, with many businesses shutting down in fear of further attacks. Hospitals, including Al-Now Hospital, which is one and only functional hospital right now in Omdurman, that has been partially hit and overwhelmed with the casualties operating under extreme pressures with limited supplies available. This is yet another reminder of the immense toll of the conflict is having on the civilians in Omdurman. And as you mentioned earlier on regarding the Al-Bashir, so there are deliberate targets being made to the civil infrastructure and the hospitals.
Do you get the feeling that hospitals themselves are being targeted?
Yeah, one of the key examples is recently in Al-Bashir Hospital, which is one and only hospital in Saudi, called a Saudi hospital, is being targeted, and more than 70 admitted patient died on the spot. And today, same what we witnessed, that a next building to the Al-Now hospital is being targeted. So it's been a deliberate target to the civilian infrastructure on ground.
What do you do in a situation like this when the resources are already so dire? You've already had 12 million people uprooted. You've already had 106,000 people estimated to be suffering from famine in Khartoum. It's so desperate, it's beyond words.
Even though you say not only the deliberate target, but in addition to that, the siege condition like in Nadar or Al-Bashir, from last 4-5 months, the city is under siege and no supplies is being given. And same as today in Khartoum, it's not the first time that civilian markets, the civilian infrastructure is being targeted. So the normal supplies cannot be provided to the individual and vulnerable and these displaced people on the ground. The situation is catastrophic, but I would say, as you mentioned about the famine condition, in Al-Bashir, famine is declared from last 5 months, and deliberately humanitarian organization was stopped, and they were not allowed to bring the supplies into the Zamzam camp, having around 1 million population.
You talk about that region because it is in the west. It's controlled by the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary. And then you've got the east and close towards Port Sudan, where you are, which is much more in the hands of the army. Given that the country is basically divided and split in two in terms of the control, how does that complicate your kind of work?
Obviously, the bureaucratical impediments have been increased from the major site in Nadar, where we are not able to bring any of the supply. We are trying our level best to get all the pharmaceutical, nutrition supplies, and so on, but we were not allowed to bring. We are coordinating with the conflicting parties to authorize to move all these supplies, but unfortunately we remain unsuccessful. And we doubt if in next 2 weeks, specifically in Al-Bashir, if we are not able to bring the supplies, where Relief International and MSF are only few organizations working on ground, we may need to suspend our operations.
Suspending of operations in Port Sudan, I'm assuming you are in one of the only places in Sudan which has access to the sea and obviously where the imports are coming from. Just can you describe to us exactly what you're looking at right now when you see the ports at Port Sudan and what kind of aid is coming in, what countries are helping?
So there are different countries, different donors, they are helping around, specifically like the Relief International is being funded through various donors like ECHO, SHF, and so on, and including we are also getting the fund from the USA. So we have seen that the all the aid is coming to Port Sudan, going to east without having any major challenges. But on the west side, the supplies from the Chad onwards are getting a lot of issue because of different impediments being placed and the siege condition being put on ground. That's why on the west side, there are a lot of issues we are facing and observing right now.
There's a phrase which is being used for the Sudan civil war. It's often being touted as the forgotten war in the world. How do we make sure that the international community doesn't lose sight of what is actually happening in Sudan right now?
Obviously, one of the things I would say that media role is really important over here. I would request all the media to continue to educate on the Sudan. Right now, it's one of the biggest crises around the globe, and you cannot imagine the condition on ground. The IDPs and the refugees across border, they are suffering. They are not having enough medicine. They are not having enough food available. The situation is catastrophic. I believe if the international community will not come and press the conflicting party to stop this, will be seeing another major crisis where the death toll will go increase day by day. And unfortunately, due to the bureaucratical impediments and others, maybe international community will not be able to support because we are looking international actors, major partners to come and have a dialogue to resume the discussion to stop this war.
Kashif, thank you so much for giving us your summary of the events. I'd like to just bring in quickly Khulud Khai, who joins us from Washington, where she is the founding director of Confluence Advisory. Khulud, thanks so much for joining us. This is obviously on the back of this development in Omdurman, and 54 dead. It's just another massive amount of bodies piling up, civilian bodies, and it's the same forces at play. What is going on? Where do we go from here?
I mean, it looks like there is a very steep descent into serious atrocities now that the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces are fighting it out so savagely over Khartoum. The Sudanese armed forces is making a lot of headway in Khartoum, and the attacks that we're seeing today by the rapid support forces look very much like vengeful attacks. They look like the attacks of an army that knows it's losing a significant strategic territory. And so what we're going to continue to see as the RSF withdraws is effectively what they do best, enacting a very acute and very sort of serious amount of atrocities against civilians.
You mentioned exactly there the strikes employed by the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. They've denied any involvement, and we know that the military has the monopoly, at least on airstrikes. Are we absolutely certain that it was the Rapid Support Forces in this instance? It's not absolving them, it's just making sure.
Well, what we're seeing is that, there have been shellings by the RSF. They do have drone capabilities from which they're able to drop shelling that is very, very impactful and has killed a lot of people. Now, there's a lot of he said in the fog of war. But what we're hearing from local civil society actors is that they believe it is the RSF this time. Of course, the army has also not been innocent in this. And as you said, they have dropped heavy weaponry, sometimes 1,000-pound bombs in places, particularly in Darfur. But what we have seen in Khartoum is that it is often the RSF that is just shelling large parts of the capital, as they do in other parts of the country.
Let me just quickly turn again to Kashif, who's joining us from Port Sudan, because I want to just get an understanding if civilians and in those very densely populated areas, if this has been the same modus operandi of the RSF, possibly even the army in this in any instance, that they look at places which are densely populated like these markets. Is this the strategy?
Ultimately, civilians are bearing the brunt of it, which is really unfortunate. Because if you see the series of attacks which are being made on the civilian infrastructure, and especially the care institutions, which may head towards that it's a deliberate attacks being happened.
And just going again, turning to Khulud. Khulud, the situation on the ground, at least if we can say who's got the upper hand, because this comes after, just one day after the RSF commander Hemeti, or Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, basically vowed to retake Khartoum. It hasn't been going so well for the RSF. So is this attack now on the back of that?
It certainly seems so. Yes, the RSF have tried to communicate through the speech of General Hemeti and a few others that they are not going to let Khartoum go without a fight. Now, obviously, just as Kashif said, this war is being fought on the bodies of civilians. And so what it looks like it's going to be is that whether the RSF is able to claim back any territory from the military or not, and it doesn't look like they will be able to, it will make it very bloody, a very bloody exit as they leave the capital. Of course, we also know that in Al-Fashir, the capital of North Darfur, they have been waging a very bloody siege on that city for a very long time. So this is absolutely part of what the RSF does well. When they are in a winning streak, they commit atrocities. When they are withdrawing and losing territory, they also commit atrocities. It is the reason that they were created by the Sudanese state, effectively to wage war and incur maximum damage on civilian and military targets.
All dating back to the Janjaweed militia in Darfur. What is the end game here? Because it appears on the face of thing and on paper that the RSF just wants power for the sake of power. Do they have any idea how to actually lead a country?
So far, the evidence seems to suggest not at all. And this is something that so many within the civil society space have been pointing out from the outset, is that what we have here is a war where one side doesn't have a governance strategy at all. That's the RSF. And the other side has a governance strategy that will pretty much take Sudan back to the time of Omar al-Bashir. Now, value, sort of ascribing value to that aside, the point is here, I think, that no side here is putting forth the kind of governance strategy that will bring the country together, that will unite the country, and that will bring peace and prosperity. That has been abjectly missing. What we have seen from the RSF is wherever they go, there is chaos, there is violence, and there is no ability for any kind of state infrastructure to take place. And despite this, they are claiming that they want to set up a government, and they have civilian allies claiming that they will be able to set a government up in places that the RSF controls. I don't think anybody sees any credible trajectory here or any credible ability for the RSF to do so.
It's quite a bleak outlook if that is the case. But Khulud, thank you so much for just providing us that insight and that analysis. And once again, a big thank you to Kashif Shafiq from Port Sudan. Unfortunately, we will have to move on to other stories around the globe right now. And that